Hey guys, what's up? Welcome to this week's video. In this week's video we're going to take a look back at the right click context menu. If you're not familiar with what that is, I'll link the video down below so you can go through the steps of making it. I do apologise, they are an older video and they do have some background music. I am sorry for that, but if you can bear through that you'll have this kind of menu. So what we've got is sort of like a simulated RuneScape style context menu. If you hover over something, you've got the ability to have this menu open up in the world, which you can sort of walk to destinations, you can examine or cancel the menu. But then if you find, if you watch through the video in part 2, we then start adding in interactables. So we can go on this castle door, for example. This is interactable and you can see that it gives us the option to open it. We can open the door and that then automatically updates with close. And that is the context menu. So to build on that further, a few requests that I've had is if you've ever played RuneScape and especially using the Rune-like client, when you hover over an interactable object, it sort of gives you this little hover card which shows you what that interactable is and what the interaction is. So if I just quickly jump in here and I enable it, I can give you a quick example of what that looks like. So we'll compile that and we'll run it. So now when we hover over the door, you can see that it gives us the interactable option of open castle door. At the moment the functionality is a little bit like that. I'm going to put that in a part 2, or I guess it would be part 4 if this would be part 3. But essentially once we click on it, it allows us to open the door and then we can close it. And then we can run through the door. So at the moment the click sort of limits movement, but you can see here is if I run over there but then open the door, the nav mesh actually updates and says, oh hang on, now the door's open, I can go there. This isn't perfected for me, but anyway, I don't want to dwell on that too much. This video is not about the actual interaction part, but more about the card being present on the screen, as you can see here. With that card, so it does track the object that is interactable, and yeah, that's pretty much it. So let's just dive straight into it. Okay, so just before I start, what I will say is that this does follow on from the previous video, the context menu video. We're just going to take the context menu and we're going to sort of strip it down into a simpler version. So you will need the previous video to continue, unfortunately. If I get enough requests, what I might do is I might copy these bits of code, these bits of blueprint, and paste them online so then you can copy them. If you don't really have the time to go through the other videos, that's fine. I just can't promise you'll get a working result straight away from that, but I'll try and talk through as much as you need to know if you are to follow along as we go along, but it would really be a benefit if you do the previous video first. Anyway, with that being said, what we're going to do, first things first, we are just going to take a copy of the context menu. So the context menu basically is a couple of panels, borders and size boxes which just have some buttons set up within it. It's just a basic bit of UI. We're going to copy this and we're going to strip everything out apart from the interact with object, because that's the main part of this. So what we'll do is just close this out, go back to my example map. Now another thing, I've got 2 content browsers open here. Really I'm only using this side for my controller, but yeah, that's that. So this is the folder with all my HUD elements in. If you followed through the previous tutorial, you should have a HUD folder too, but essentially context menu, we're going to right click and we're going to duplicate that. I'm going to call this one hover menu. Actually, no, I'm not. I'm going to call it mouse over menu. So the mouse over menu, we're going to open that up. We're just going to make some basic edits to it. So first things first, we do not need the cancel button, we don't need the examine button, and we don't need the walk here button. We don't need the 2 spaces at the bottom. We also don't need the choose option text, so we'll get rid of that. Now this button, if we drag it onto the overlay, we'll be given a grey background, so you can change your colour up there. Now obviously because of the way the button was made, there's still a lot of sort of borders and other bits of panels here, but essentially you just need an interact with text and another text for the object, I've put a spacer between the two just to give it a sort of a defined amount of spacing, and then the interact with and the object both have text bindings, which I'll go over in just a minute because we do need to make some changes to how this operates. But essentially now you can change the border color to anything that you want, just to make this a bit more apparent. I'm going to change the alpha down just a little bit to like 0.6, something like that. And then if you have another border, what you can do is you can set that to something wacky like bright pink, or in my case I might go for bright green. Now this does, because I've made the other one have some opacity, obviously the colour is kind of overwritten by the previous border, but that's pretty distinct, so I'm just going to have that for now for this example, but please make it how you will. So we've got our interact button, so that's that. I'm going to hit compile, and we're getting some errors. Now because we deleted those other buttons, some of the previous scripts, like what happens if we press them buttons, obviously don't exist anymore, so we can just delete all of those. I'm going to leave the on pressed. Now realistically, because of the nature of how this hover menu is going to work, it's going to follow the mouse, so in a sense the button's never going to be pressed, so needing that, you don't really need that, but just in case I'm just going to keep it there just because the functionality is already set up, and there's no need to get rid of it. So I'm also going to get rid of the event dispatchers, so I'm going to get rid of cancel, examine and walk pressed. Hit compile, and I shouldn't have any errors, which I don't. One other thing I'm going to do is on this context menu, I did have an automatic transparency, whether it was visible or not was set up. This actually causes us some issues with the way that we're going to make it, so we just need to disconnect that or delete it entirely. It's up to you. So hit compile. The interact message, so that's how this interact with changes depending on what it is. So this would change from interact with to the word open or close for a door, for example. This is also a binding with a function, so we'll go back to the graph. We're going to open that get interact message. So what it does is it uses the player controller to find an object that we've hit, which we'll get to in just a minute if you've not followed the previous video. Essentially, whatever our mouse hovers over, we store as a hit result. We just find out whether that's got a interactable interface on it, just to make sure. If it's not interactable, we don't want the card to come up. If it is, then we can get the interact message, and we're basically setting the text based on the interactable object, or which option of interactable it is. And then we've also got an update examine text, which again we don't actually use, but we do. We don't have examine, but it uses the same. The object here uses the same code as the examine text, so we're going to keep it. And essentially that does something very similar. Using the controller, we find out what our mouse is over, what we've hit with our mouse. If it's an interactable, we can continue. And then if it's an interactable, we would have stored a name in that interactable. You would have got that from part 2 in the context menu. It basically takes the name you've entered for the object and returns it as a string. Alternatively, if that's not available, what it also does is just take the object's display name. So if you've got it called cube 6 or door 1, it would show that, just so then there's something there rather than it being blank. But obviously you want to work towards this interactable get name. But yeah, so they're all fine. So what we're going to do now is we're going to go to our main HUD, which I've already got it open, but I'll just close it and reopen it. Essentially these HUD widgets all go onto a main HUD. That's just one centralized place that you can put all your custom widgets on, and because they're all sort of a part of the main UI, they're all going to be here. You can have as many widgets as you want, and you can stack them however you like. So on here I've got a context menu, which you can see here, the interactable, which is the one that I showed you in the demo. We're actually going to delete that and replace it with the one we've just made, and then a compass, which I've not done a video on, but it's just something I've been adding to this game. It's just something to test. Anyway, so we're on the main HUD. What we're going to do now is in the palette on the left hand side, we're going to scroll down, and we can see here we've got a mouse over menu. We're going to drag that out, and that's just going to sit straight in the middle. It doesn't really matter where you put it, because the code that we're going to do in a minute, the blueprint, is going to update that. So we're just going to hit compile, and then you can see we've got an error, and I do apologise because this is actually an error from the original menu. I do apologise. I've actually put that right at the bottom, so we should ignore that, but I've forgot to disconnect it, so sorry about that. Please ignore that. Compile again, and that disappears. So we've got that. So what we really need to do now is, I guess we need to set how this updates, or how the location changes. So I'm just going to nip over to the graph. Now, this is where I said it's quite important that you've either followed along with the previous tutorial, because we have this open context menu, and this works alongside the controller. So really the only two things you need to have open now is your game controller. So for me it's top-down controller and the main HUD. So what happens is in the top-down controller, now just a bit of clarification, in the top-down template it comes with this pre-made bit of code of get the mouse position, and sort of, I think it comes with this, sorry, it's get hit result under cursor, whatever we hit, move to there. In the context menu video we just expanded on that, of whenever we use the right mouse button and right click, get where the position of the mouse is, and set that as a location. That's useful for where are we going to open the menu on the screen. We also then get whatever we've hit in the world, so it fires a line trace from the mouse into the world, and that is what we've saved as a context result. So anything that we've hit under the mouse, set that as a target that we've hit, and then open the menu. When we open the menu, this goes straight back to the main HUD, as you can see. We run this function where we open up the context menu, and then obviously for the context menu to have a position, we take that click location that I just showed you a moment ago. We also get the viewport size. We do a quick division of the two, so then we know whereabouts on the screen to display. Essentially what you're doing, you're offsetting the position of the mouse to the actual size of the window, and we're turning that into a 2D vector. That then becomes your anchor points. An anchor point is what the UI uses to know, if I click on this, that is an anchor point, and basically that changes. So as I click, the anchor point gets set to wherever I click, and then if we set the position and the alignment to 0 in a sense, it'll always be in the top right hand corner, essentially where the mouse would be, and that's effectively how it works. Sorry, so let's go back to the graph. So we set the anchor point. Now there's a little bit here, if we take where the mouse is in comparison to the viewport size, if it's greater than 85% of the screen, so if it's over here in the corner, we don't want the menu to open this way because it'd be off the screen. We want it to reverse and flip. So essentially if it's greater than 85% of the screen is true, we actually want to set the alignment to 1, which effectively flips, you can't actually see that, it flips the card. So if the mouse is here, it'd be at this side of the mouse rather than this side, and it prevents the menu from being off the screen. That's all explained in the video too. So the alignment's flipped if necessary. Then with all these stats that we've got, we set the alignments, we set the anchor points, we set the position. As you can see, it's 0, 0, so it follows the anchor. And then finally we change the visibility. So we kind of need to do all the same things for the hover menu. So what we can do is we can basically clone that. So let's copy that. Let's come down the bottom here and let's just paste it. So zoom in. So this custom event has come up with a warning because we've copied it. When it copied and pasted, it pasted with the same name as the previous one. Obviously you can't have two events of the same name, so we could just fix that by changing the name here. Let's change it to open mouse over menu, and if you hit compile, you'll see that error disappears. So we've now got a new function or an event for opening this menu. All of this code is going to be exactly the same because we don't want it to hang off the edge of the screen, and we want it to follow the mouse, which is good. The only things we need to change is obviously our context menu is no longer the thing we want to display, so we can delete these context menu slots and this context menu. If you are to compile now, all of these will throw an error, so don't do that just yet. But to get the targets that we need to go up to the top. Now, I've appropriately titled this setup. Essentially what this does is, again, this will be in the previous video, but we get our player controller, cast to it and set a reference to it. That's just so then we can get to the player controller a bit easier anywhere in this script, in this blueprint. We get our context menu, which is on this main HUD, and then we slot it as a canvas slot. That just allows us to move that anchor around freely. Without doing this, you wouldn't have access to the anchors or the alignments, so it wouldn't be possible. This click indicator is another thing that I've been working on, so please just discard that. You don't need that. But what we do need is we need to make a slot reference for our new mouse over menu. So because you've put the mouse over menu on the HUD, if you look at your graph and look at your variables, you will see mouse over menu. So you can drag that out, get the mouse over menu, drag off, and then slot as canvas slot should come up quite quickly. That's that. From the return value, we want to promote to a variable, and let's just plug that in. Now obviously I forgot to set the name just then, so I'm going to put mouse over menu slot. Make sure you to name things appropriately, it'll help you in the long run. So that's now slotted, so we can hit compile. Obviously those pins down below are complaining that they don't have a target, but luckily we've now got the slot. So you should see somewhere mouse over menu slot. We can drag them out, drag that down so it's more appropriate. I'm going to press Ctrl C and Ctrl V and just paste these into a decent area. Paste this and plug that in. Now for the set visibility, this is going to be the whole HUD item itself, so not the slot. Make sure you drag the whole menu and not the slot, because that will throw an error. I don't actually think it'll let you connect that because it's a different item type, but just in case it does, make sure you pick the menu rather than the slotted menu. So that's pretty much all you need for this part. Again, we've got our click location from our controller, sets our anchor points, our alignments, our position, and then changes our visibility to visible. So if we hit compile now, we can head over to the controller and just sort out this next bit of menu. So the next bit that we're going to do, again, we can borrow some of this. I'm just going to, this is the one that I've already made, just to be clear. I just want to talk you through it first. So when we press the right click button for the context menu, we're basically getting this mouse position, and then we're setting what we've hit as a result, and then we do some other stuff. So we can copy that from the context menu right click and just modify it slightly. So what we've got is this right click context menu. We can just copy all of that and we can paste it down here, hit compile. Now the problem is we're going to be changing the right mouse button because we want it to be sort of always checking for where our mouse is. Now, to do that, the best way that I've found is actually using a tick. Now, you can't have multiple ticks, so I'm just going to have to disconnect this for the time being, and drag this up. Now, if you are using the tick for something currently that you need to have, that's absolutely fine. You don't have to break that. What you would need to do is use a sequence node. Now, because this is only updating the UI, I wouldn't be too concerned about it being the first thing. Don't worry about it. You can use the then 1, then 2, and if you've got loads of stuff going on, you can have 3 or 4. I don't. I only have one thing going through the tick, so I am just going to plug this straight in. So essentially now what's going to happen is every tick, the blueprint's going to get where the mouse is on the screen, or the mouse position, and set this in this variable. Now, one thing I will mention is that this click location, you can see this set node looks a little bit different. Essentially, this is just a variable which is stored on the main HUD. You can see here that we've accessed it. So on the main HUD, we've got this click location vector. And what we've done is we've accessed that through the main HUD as the target. Now, typically what this would look like is if we set click location, it would look like this normally, but we've just right clicked and split that because we're only interested in the X and Y because your HUD does not have depth. It's essentially a flat plane, so the Z location, the depth doesn't actually is required. So you can leave it as 0. Once that's been set, that just helps the main HUD locate things on the screen. As we talked about here, it gets that location and it sort of corresponds it with your screen size. The next thing that we do then is we find out what is underneath the mouse, and we're going to set that as the context hit result. Now, we don't want to set it as a context hit result because that might differ slightly for when we press right click, if that's something that you still want to continue to do. So we're going to actually change that, and we're going to promote that to a variable, and I'm going to rename that to mouse over hit result. So we'll just connect that back up, and then we'll connect that into that. Now, this function here is open the context menu. We no longer want to do that. We want to open the mouse over menu. So let's just change that. Now, I should explain actually, I'm dragging off this pin here. This is just a reroute node, which you can make by just double clicking anywhere on the beam. Or if you haven't already done this, you can just literally type in reroute and you'll add in one of these pins. From that, you can drag off and you can say open mouse over menu. So essentially, every tick, get the location, find what we've hit with the mouse, and then open the menu. And there's only a couple of things we need to do now. So previously, if we go back to the main HUD, sorry, actually, we need to open up the mouse over. Just double click on that. Oh, sorry, edit widget blueprint. That'll take you to the mouse over menu. If we go back to the graph, you'll see that we're in these functions. Just to get to them, if you've not already opened them, at the side here you've got update examine text and get interact message. If you select these, you'll be in here. You can see that we're actually getting what we've hit with the context result. We can now change this to get mouse over result, so you can see that's there. This effectively should yield the same information, but if you no longer have the context menu running, this might throw an issue, but by changing this you're preventing that from having any issues. And it's the same again for the get interact message. We can come back over here, and instead of context hit result, we'll just get mouse over hit result, and we'll plug that in. And now I think we've done enough. Oh, so what's this? Let's just compile all of these. Compile that again. So the reason it errored for me then is because since I added in this mouse over result, I've not compiled it. So although it was visible in this script, it technically didn't exist. So if you run into any issues when you add this, just compile. So yeah, again, sorry, now we've added this in, there should be enough for it to work. So let's hit play, and currently we've got a plane enabled, open castle door, cube, blah blah blah. So it's now actually just showing everything in the area. We don't want this to happen, we only want it to be visible when something's interactable, and this is where we just need to make a few minor changes to how this code works. So jumping back to the event tick where we're actually getting the mouse over hit result, we just need to add in a few more nodes just to differentiate whether the object that we're hovering over is an interactable, because that's the only time we really want to see this menu. So just for some cleanliness, I'm just going to remove that reroute node and plug that back in now. What we want to do is whatever we've hit, we just want to break this. So what a break does is it gives you some information about the thing that you've hovered over or you've hit. And that's everything from like what's the actor, what's the bone name, what impact point, what time is it, and the actual hit results are a really good tool. But one thing we can do is from the hit actor, we can say, does this actor implement an interface? And if you followed the previous tutorials, we've made an interface, a blueprint interface for interactions. So we can say, does this have that BPI interactable interface that we've added to stuff, mainly the door? If that happens to be true, which we can check with a branch, if it happens to be true, then we want to open this menu, which what I'll do is I will disconnect this, move that over there, plug this in line here. If it's true, we want to open the menu. And I'm just going to minimize this now because we don't need it to be that big, and drag that over there like that, and I'll just move these over, just give us a bit more space. We can now drag that over here like that. I will add in a new reroute node just to go around these, so you can double click on the line and it'll add these nodes, just to make it look a bit neater. So if it's true and it does have this interactable, we want to show this menu. And just in case, what we can do is we can drag off here and we can say mouse, if we spell it right, mouse over menu. We can get that, and from that we can set its visibility. So if it's true, we want to set its visibility to visible. If it's false, what we want to do is again set visibility, but we want to set that to hidden. So if it doesn't have this this interface, this interactable interface, we don't want to see it, but if it does, we do. I might need to go back to the menu and just set it by default to hidden, but we'll just check. So yep, you can see it's working, it's not visible, but once we hover over something that's interactable, which at the moment only my door is, it pops up and you've got the interactable the mouse over widget. So I hope that was clear enough. I do understand that this is kind of like an adaptation of a previous video. If that does become problematic, please let me know in the comments. If you're struggling to follow along, either contact me in the comments or join the Discord, which will be in the description. Message me and I'll try and help you out. I had one or two people run into some issues with something similar to this, and also the context menu originally. Just things that had been missed out. It's not necessarily the video was missing something, it was just some mild confusion. If you do run into that, message me and I will help you out. If I get a majority of people that are running into issues, I might just scrap this video, re-upload a new one starting from scratch. I was hesitant to do that because I feel like this video is already going to have got quite long. I'm trying to reduce the size of my videos but keep it as detailed. But if that's the case, if I need to make a from scratch video, I will do. Please let me know down in the comments. And again, I appreciate people's feedback on all my other videos. I appreciate everybody's comments telling me if it's helped or if it hasn't. I do reply to every message, so please put your comments down below and I will get back to you. I appreciate that. If it is helpful, please consider giving me a like. If you want to see more things like this, consider subscribing so you don't miss anything. And again, I will selfishly talk about the Discord channel. There's quite a few of us now. If you've got any issues, you can pop them in there. Either myself or somebody else will try to help you, or there are some other like-minded people that you can just discuss several things with. It's a nice little community and it's coming together. With all that being said, I'm going to stop talking now. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in another video. Thank you.